You're listening to Learning Leaders Spotlight, interviews with corporate L&D leaders. On each episode, we sit down with key industry experts to discover more about what's happening in the world of learning and development, from current trends and insights to the most valuable lessons learned along the way. Join us for a fresh perspective on all things training and the best direction forward. Here's your host, Leanne Langford.
Hi, welcome to Learning Leaders Spotlight, the podcast where we interview the learning leaders of today to help the learning leaders of tomorrow. I'm your host, Leanne Langford, the president of Training Pros. Training Pros is a learning and development contract staffing company where we like to say, when you have more projects than people, let us find you the consultant to start your project with confidence. I am really excited about my guest today. I've had some good conversations with him in the past, and I think this is going to be a really good conversation today. Join me in welcoming Marc Donelson, the Director of Curriculum Development at Spectrum. Welcome, Marc.
Thanks, Leanne. It's good to talk to you again. Looking forward to the next little bit of time we've got here to dive into a few good topics.
That's great. Well, can you share with our audience a quick overview of who you are and what you do?
Sure. As you said, my name is Marc Donelson. I lead one of our learning teams here at Spectrum. And so we've got several different business units. My responsibility is really our corporate functions. So any training in or around, things like HR, IT, legal, compliance, those types of that type of content in those types of projects is where my team, adds our support. So, been here for almost 13 years. Every day it's a new challenge. It's never boring. So, it's been a great place for me. And really excited about what we're doing right now.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Can you share with our audience what it was about learning and development that first attracted you to the field?
Sure. So it's funny. It actually wasn't I kind of stumbled into learning and development, but stumbled into it very early. So it was, and I remember exactly when it happened. It was one of my classes that I took in my undergraduate program. It was called Computer Assisted Learning. Way back. I mean, I'm going to date myself with some of these references. But the first day of class, we walked in and the professor said, look, get in groups of 2 or 3. This is going to be a project team for the class. On the whiteboard, there were a list of 7 or 8 different professors from around the campus, from around the college, that had requested some sort of online learning tutorial or learning module to supplement what they were doing in class. And that was the whole program. Professor said, you don't need to show up to any classes. You've got one grade and it is working with this professor and building out whatever they need to be built out and working with that. And so went through that class and just loved that process, consulting with a customer or a client and having those conversations that we've all become so familiar with between a SME and an ID and negotiating and figuring out, all right, I understand you're the owner of this, but if we do it your way, it's not going to land well with your end users and with your learners. So just really love that process. And then coming out of school, I thought if I can do that for a living, that'd be really cool. I'd love to do that. And really fell in love with the technology side of it. So came out as an e-learn developer. And again, I'll date myself here, but I used to love authorware and director. Those were the years that I got my start. And it just so happened so I love those tools in that process. And it just so happened that learning and development pulled all those things together and gave me an opportunity to do that. So that's where I started. And since then it's gone from e-learn developer to instructional designer to performance consultant, and now leading an instructional design team. So it's been a wild ride, but that's really how I got my start. Was I wanted to use author and director as much as I could, and L&D was a place to do it.
I remember authorware, and director. Was that Macromedia
Oh,
director?
yeah, the Macromedia suite of things. Oh, I was in heaven in that stuff. So,
And I remember back then it used to cost like $1 million to make an e-learning course. It
yeah,
was so difficult to use those. I remember trying to learn authorware in my spare time.
yeah.
No, you can't do it in your spare time.
No, yeah, I was self-taught. But yeah, I dedicated some time to learning how to do it because I knew like if you're gonna get a job doing this stuff, you better know how to do it well. So yeah, dedicated time and it worked out for me. So I was happy.
That's fantastic. Well, since you've been here as long as I have, so you have seen some changes. What are the most impactful changes you've seen in learning and development in the last few years?
Um, I mean, I think that there's the obvious ones. Technology, AI. I'm sure I've listened to several of the podcasts, and I'll jump on the same bandwagon. Like every learning leader says, mentions AI in some way. So that's been the big change over the last couple of years. I think just that, along with any other technology. I mean, 5 years ago, everybody was big and excited about VR and AR, and I don't know that really took off quite the way people thought it was going to. It probably did in pockets, but not kind of this. It didn't revolutionize learning the way some people thought it was going to. But I think that's those have been the big things. It's around the technology, like instructional design principles. They're the same as they always have been. Being able to write learning objectives and engaging activities and giving people practice and not just talking at them. I mean, those principles they haven't changed in years and years and years. And I don't see that they're ever going to change. It's just how we put that content in front of people. The modalities are changing, but the underlying baseline is going to, that hasn't changed, and I don't expect it to.
That's very fair. I mean, the adult learning principles will always be the adult learning principles.
Exactly.
The trends might change, the generations might change, but the principles are going to remain the same.
Yeah, exactly. So, so what, today's big technology in 10 years may be revolutionize the way we do things, or it may be a whole new technology or a whole new thing that's coming out that we're just going to apply those principles to. And so, people can learn as easily as they can.
I couldn't agree with you more. So, Mark, where do you see the learning and development space headed in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple areas. One, I think technology is certainly going to continue to play a huge role. I think our reliance on technology is going to get more and more. I don't think we're going to get further from technology. I think it's just going to be what technology do we use. Certainly around AI. I don't think AI is going to take any of our jobs, at least from instructional designer jobs. But I think those that know how to use AI are going to, separate themselves, and they're going to be able to do things quicker and faster. So yeah, I think that technology is always going to play a big role. I think, again, just what that technology is going to vary over the next few years. Right now, I equate AI to, it's a tool. If leveraged well, it can do some great things. I'm reminded back to the, computer assisted learning years, or we were talking earlier about, the Macromedia products and how easy it was to build with some of those tools. I had a colleague at the time say, we now have tools that allow us to make crappy training faster. Like we still need to do like our instructional design type of things. So while technology will play a role, again, I think it's still those instructional designer skills that are going to separate us. I think another thing will be what we call here is invisible learning. And that's putting the learning just in the workspace, like in the workflow, and not necessarily, having them having people swivel to a learning management system and take a course and then swivel back to their desks to do stuff. It's how can we just put the learning in their workflow so they don't even realize they're learning. It's just on demand in the job, part of the workflow. I mean, I think the best analogy I heard was, GPS. GPS is learning. You plug an address in and you don't know you're learning. You're just following this path, what they tell you to do. And after you do that 2 or 3 times, you now know how to get there. You don't need the performance support anymore. So I think learning's going to be the same way. So, we, like for any of our system training, we try to put the reference materials inside the tool or as close to the tool as we can. So again, it's just seamless. It's easier to find and it's easier for our end users. I think the other thing will be something that we've done here is, we steal a lot of stuff from modern media. The way, some of the concepts that they use. We start a lot of our training with like, what is that first 30 to 60 seconds that's really going to grab your attention? So some of the TV shows, movies, like these studios, they spend millions of dollars on focus groups around like what's going to grab your attention. Like most learning development groups, we don't have millions of dollars to spend on that. So like, let's leverage what modern media and what's going on in society and culture is doing that we can steal and apply in our space to, again, build that engagement and layer that on top of those instructional design principles to create learning experiences that people enjoy. And it's not I got to go to training. It's not a negative feeling. It's all right. This is something that's enjoyable and I'm learning out of it as well. So I think those 3, again, reliance on technology, invisible learning, and then again, stealing from what other people are doing in other industries that we can apply to our learning materials. So, when I look at the future, I think those are 3 areas that we'll see more and more of.
Yeah, I agree. I have been around many people who have a new hammer, and so they're looking for a nail.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. And I think, they used to say that, computer-based training was going to revolutionize everything. And I don't know that it's revolution. It's a different modality. And when used properly, it's really effective. And when used improperly, it's really, really a bad experience and it wastes a lot of people's time.
It's simply changed the way we deliver it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I started in learning development before computer training was really around. So we had paper-based and we had classroom-based, and we would make videos and send it to people. But now we actually are putting the videos in the e-learning. So it's the same.
Yeah, it's the same thing. So, I still remember the days of building e-learning courses and, burning them to 250 CDs and sending them out to all the different locations. So I'm glad we're not there anymore, but I don't know, some of that was kind of nice.
The expectations for distributing learning was a little bit lower than now. You did have to do that. You just ship it out and send it to people. So let's shift gears a little bit. Who has been your most influential professional mentor?
Ooh. So I've had a couple good ones, but the one that sticks out was a former manager of mine that I reported to. And I started reporting to him the timing was perfect for me. And really he was such a good leader. He gave me the space that I needed to be creative in the ways I wanted to be creative. Previous managers had said, all right, this is our process. We need you to fit into this slot. I think and he really gave me the opportunity to, all right, what can Marc do? And let's give him the space to do what he does well. And so that really, he was a great example of leadership for me. And even then he promoted me into my first leadership role. And, personally, I guess I was an okay instructional designer. I mean, I was good enough to get by. But I always felt like my personality and my passions were more around people leadership than it was individual contributors in actually doing the design work. Uh, and so and when he promoted me into my first leadership role, uh, he looked at me many, many times when, he could just kind of see me glazed over, overwhelmed with this new role. And he would just laugh and look at me and say, remember, like, you asked for this. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I did. So like, I got to figure this out. But he always had that great balance of support and now like Mark, I could save Mark from this, or I can let him learn on his own. And this is something he needs to learn on his own. And I know he's going to fall flat on his face. This is the way you've got to learn some of this stuff. So he was really good. We still stay in touch. We still work together. So, but that's the one that really sticks out. And it was just his example of what knowing where those boundaries are. This is not something I want Mark to fail on, or this is something Mark needs to fail on, and learn it that way.
So I do love that. I actually was just having a conversation right before our podcast recording with an employee about how you learn more from failing than you do from being successful.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and so I try to take that in with my designers. What are those safe places to fail, and where the real big public projects that we're working on that like those are not the places I want people to fail. So those are the places I need to step in. But no, I agree 100%. I've learned way more from my failures and from observing leaders that were bad leaders. To realize that's not the way I want to do it. When I get into those roles. So no, I couldn't agree more with you, Leanne.
That's an interesting one. Learning from leaders who did a poor job. I like that.
Yeah.
The world has changed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is the most important skill right now for people to have?
I would say, at least for instructional designers, but this probably goes for a lot of roles. So it might sound a little generic or general, but what jumps out to me is partnering and critical thinking. I think there's, and I've had a lot of IDs work for me and work on my teams and work with me. And they're all really strong designers. Very few people that I've seen in the learning space struggle because they don't know how to do their jobs or how to put together good learning materials. It's that working with stakeholders, which is interesting because, through my undergrad and my grad programs, they teach you how to design and how to develop and how to evaluate. I don't remember ever taking a class on how to partner with stakeholders. So I think that's a big piece that at least from what I see on my team here, that if things go off the rails, it's usually because we didn't do a good job partnering, whether that was setting expectations up front or not owning what we should be owning. So I think that's that's one big thing. And then as far as, critical thinking, and this really goes kind of back to AI. You had Michelle Lenz on your podcast a few months ago. And when I listened to that podcast, I agreed with everything she said. I thought she was spot on with, we can't over rely on AI. AI is a tool that will give us something to work from. And I think a key, to answer this question, a key skill is going to be really critically thinking about, all right, this is what AI kicked out to me. Is it good enough the way it is? We could go with it the way it is, but we've really got to be much more critical thinking. He's got to go up to look at what AI kicks out and say, all right, like, how can we make this better? As opposed to, all right, let's use AI to speed things along. Let's use AI to get a draft. And now we really need to be much more critical in in what we think good learning is and how far away is what AI kicked out from where it needs to be. So I think that so that's an example within learning and development. But honestly, I think every role and every person in the world right now could use a little bit more critical thinking, to just not take things at face value and question and, spend the time to really understand things for themselves so that they can then use that information.
Very good. And you know what? I'll give Michelle a call and tell her that you might think about. Well, but no, I couldn't agree more. The world can definitely use more critical thinking, and I don't think they teach that in school anymore either.
No, yeah, and honestly, I don't know. That's one of those skills you've got to pick up through experience. I don't think you can take an e-learning course or sit in a class and be like, all right, by the end of this class, you'll be able to critically think. I think that's a lifelong skill that you just pick up through experiences and through mistakes and through failures to realize I don't want to do that again. So I need to think better going forward.
I think it is a life skill. And so when I had very small children, who, by the way, they're now grown in apartments, but I read a book called Raising a Thinking Child because I was like, I don't think they teach them how to think anymore.
I don't know that they do. That's definitely a parental and world experience type of skill that it's the only way they're going to learn.
And I don't want to take credit, but I do have thinking children.
Well, good. Then you did a good job.
I just think that they're smart kids, but to me, it was important. I was like, this is not something they're going to learn in school. It's how to question everything and think for yourself, and don't just listen to what someone says and say, oh, well, that must be right.
Exactly. Yeah. You've got to, there's way too much misinformation out there, to do that and end up in a place that you're comfortable. So, you've got to question everything.
Absolutely. So what is your favorite source for industry news and information these days?
Ooh. So honestly, it's probably the first place I usually go is LinkedIn, to see what other people are posting, and then what draws my attention, what's interesting that I see there. So that usually starts most of my learning research, or let me dig deeper into it. And honestly, after that, it's usually YouTube. So, if I see something interesting, I'll go to YouTube and look it up and see what else other people are saying about it. So I spend most of my lunch hours, going through, eating lunch at my desk, going through different YouTube movies, whether it's on learning stuff, whether it's on leadership stuff, brain science, whatever it turns out to be that I'm interested in that day, that something triggered that morning in me. And I'm like, oh, this is what I'm going to explore over lunch. So really those are probably the two big ones. I'd love to say, I'm huge into research articles and Harvard articles and Wall Street Journal. I'm not. I'm really much simpler than that. It's LinkedIn, what comes up on my feed, and then jumping into YouTube to see what other people are saying and what TED Talks are out there on it and that kind of stuff.
So I love that. So I like LinkedIn as well as a good aggregator of content.
Mm-hmm.
I could see a variety of topics, and like you said, then I'll go research it. But instead of YouTube, I'll do a Google search, or I'll go out and see what people are writing about. And I actually have my own aggregator. I have like a weekly thing that I have ChatGPT do for me, that goes out and it pulls the titles and links of all the blog posts from specific websites for me. And then I just can go through the list and then pick which ones I think I want to read.
Yeah. That's, and if I don't find something right away on YouTube, I'm right behind you on Google. And then we've got some internal newsletters here at the company, at Spectrum, that, around our business that I dive into as well. But that's more on the business acumen side, less on the learning development side. But I try to balance those two out so that I can then apply the learning stuff to the business stuff.
You definitely have to keep up with what your business is talking about if you're going to be effective at all.
100%. Yep, you've got to.
Okay, last question, always the hardest one. What is one book that everyone wanting to move into L&D leadership should read?
Oh, yeah, I had a hard time with one book. But as I thought about the question, I don't know that I would say this is just for L&D leadership, because in my mind, like if you can lead in L&D, you can lead other places in other functions. So I think just from a leadership perspective, I think that the books that that jump out to me, one would be Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek, and two, The Servant Leader by Ken Blanchard. Those are probably, again, the two that jump out to me. I will confess, and you can ask anybody I work with, like I'm a big Simon Sinek fan. So like I've read all of his stuff. And so I'll promote kind of his process and his books. And yeah, the servant leader, like that's what I try to be. My viewpoint on leadership is my job is to remove obstacles so people that are actually doing the work can do the work. So while we say, oh, they're on my team, they work for me, I think any good leader would say it's the opposite. Like, my job is like, I work for you, or we work together. And this is my role, is to allow you to do what you do so well. So yeah, I mean, that's, again, my viewpoint is, I mean, we should all be servant leaders. So, but I also realize like, that's kind of who I am naturally. So it's easy for me to say that. Someone that's got a different personality may give you a very different answer on that one.
I couldn't agree more. I say that all the time. I'm like, yes, I have 21 bosses.
Yeah.
Because my whole job is just to make sure they can do their jobs. So
yeah, when I have one-on-ones with any of my team members, if I walk out with more action items than they do, that's usually a good sign that things are going the right direction. So not always, and of course, it depends on what the action items are. But it's kind of one of those quick litmus tests. It's like, all right, if they're walking out with all the action items, something's not right. So yeah, it's definitely a shared load.
it's great. Gosh, so you have been a fantastic guest today, Mark. I really enjoyed talking to you, just like I have in the past. And I think that our listeners will enjoy listening to what you have to say. I want to thank you for being here. And since you've listened to our podcast, you already know this. We plant trees in the world as our charity.
Which I love. I absolutely love that. Is an outdoors person. Like when I heard that the first time, I thought, that is genius. This is great. I'm so excited about that.
Well, I'll take it. I'm a genius. How about that? Yeah, it's really it's nice, especially people in the L&D field like us. We like to do good things, right? We like to help. And I just wanted us to find a charity that we could easily make an impact in the world. So we've planted over 5,000 trees to date. And as our thank you to you for being a guest on our podcast, we're going to plant 5 trees in your name. So,
thank you. I'm honored that you'll do that. Yeah, and it was a great time with you today. Really appreciate the invite. And yeah, would love to be back anytime.
That's great. So that's it for this week's episode of Learning Leader Spotlight. Join us again next week to hear from another learning leader and another industry.
Thanks for joining us for the latest episode of Learning Leader Spotlight, interviews with corporate L&D leaders. You'll find links in the show notes to any resources mentioned on today's show. If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe so you never miss an episode and leave us a 5-star review.